a real sense of deja vu today. You're asking yourself, have I seen this video before? I could have sworn I saw this on my sub box a few months back, or well, quite a few months back actually now, right after the Australian Grand Prix. I know, a little bit preemptive, but right after the first race of the season, I did my predictions for the 2020 driver lineups. Some people say it's a little bit too early, but I also did it for the 2018 season, looking into 2019, and personally, I just think it's quite fun doing it right at the beginning of the year. You've only got one race to go off, you've only got pre-season testing to go off, it's not a fat lot. The only issue with that, you don't really know what's going on, and it's very difficult to predict how the season's going to go, what's going to happen with driver transfers. And as we've already seen this summer, crazy things have happened in the world of Formula 1 this season. So let's have a look at my updated 2020 driver lineups. Quick heads up as well, as you see the two McLaren drivers come up on screen, there is going to be a mix here of my new graphics and graphics we used right at the beginning of the year, because I thought it'd be fun to show you who I thought after the first race was going to be in these teams. So already we're going to start with McLaren because they're confirmed. Nailed in, Carlos Sainz, Lando Norris, they've got another contract extension, so they are confirmed for 2020. Easy does it. My predictions all the way back in March, Sainz and Norris. One for me. Very happy with that. I mean, let's be honest, it was an easy one. It was a pretty easy one. And I also think that's the only one I got correct. So, hey, we'll have to wait and see. But McLaren, both drivers, doing a pretty awesome job this season. Sainz leading that team, leading the midfield. Norris, for me, rookie of the season so far this year. But that very easily could change with Albon in the Red Bull. The next team, that are 95% confirmed. I mean, last year, I've just noticed they both say Daniel Ricciardo. That is incorrect. But Sergio Perez on the left, Lance Stroll on the right. I don't think this really comes to too much of a surprise for anyone. I mean, it's not been a brilliant season for Racing Point. Stroll, I mean, we all know Stroll wasn't going to go with his father and his consortium of business boys and girls buying out the team last season. And I think that's why Sergio Perez is most likely to stay, because of the fact he helped take the team into administration and save the team as it was last season. However, back at the beginning of the year, I did not think Perez would stay, and it wasn't at the time. I didn't think Perez would be kicked out. I think I was along the lines thinking that he'd like to move, and I still felt that up until a couple of weeks ago, just before the summer break, when it was pretty much confirmed he wants to stay. So I think I may have got this one wrong, unfortunately, but yes, Perez and Stroll very likely to stay. Also, after the first race of the season, this was my Ferrari 2020 lineup. I made the bold prediction that Sebastian Vettel would retire at the end of this season. And whilst there was a little period, France, Canada, Austria, some difficult races, Silverstone, for example, as well. Some difficult races for Seb. I don't really see him retiring, to be honest with you. So, I know it's boring, but I'm going to say they're going to stick with their lineup, at least for one more year. I think both of them have been okay this season. But okay is all I'm going to give them, because although they haven't got a victory, there's been chances. There's been chances. Off the top of my head, I can think of 4 Grand Prix they could have and probably should have won this year. Bahrain should have won. Azerbaijan, I mean, Leclerc made a mistake in quali, but they definitely had a quick car there. Austria, I mean, how close was Leclerc in Austria to winning that first race? And of course, I hate bringing it up, very sorry, but Canada. Did they win that one? Let's be honest, I mean, it's been a difficult year for Ferrari. Strategy has been pretty poor again. It's been getting better, but it's been pretty poor. Drivers, I think, have been a tad inconsistent, but I think they've been good enough, and we all know both are good enough to have top seats in Formula 1, so I don't see any changes happening at Ferrari, but I think there's definitely drivers out there sniffing around. Now, Sebastian Vettel's had a shaky start, and there were rumours of his retirement, so I don't expect him to stay for too much longer. And with guys like Ricciardo in the midfield, Carlos Sainz potentially sniffing about for a bigger seat if McLaren don't really get their act together over the next few years, maybe there could be a switch, but no, not for 2020. Our next team we're going to be looking at is Alfa Romeo Racing, and whoa, that was a bold prediction. Bold prediction from me there. I went with Kimi Raikkonen to stay. Yeah, that's pretty straightforward. He's got a 2-year contract with Alfa Romeo, but I also said, wow, I said that Mick Schumacher would come into Formula 1, and my reasoning behind this at the time, and I can still understand this, is that Giovinazzi, he hasn't had the best year, and the first race of the year, he wasn't brilliant. I've got him in for 2020 in my predictions now, but after that first race, I thought, you know what, I can... And bear in mind, Formula 2 hadn't started then. I didn't predict Schumacher to even have a brilliant year in Formula 2, but I was thinking along the lines of what a PR move that would be to bring Schumacher in. But more so, to bring Schumacher in while Raikkonen is still in Formula 1, to give Schumacher that experienced man alongside him. Not that Raikkonen's particularly talkative, that I think we all know about, but I was thinking maybe they would rush him into Formula 1, jump on the hype train, but as it is, it's not been a brilliant season so far for Schumacher, and we spoke about it in the mailbox the other day, if you didn't catch that one. There was a question about Mick Schumacher, and I think he will get to Formula 1. He's always done better in his second season of any championship he's been in. He picked up a victory in the sprint race just before the summer break in Hungary. A little bit lucky in terms of the reverse pole that they do in Formula 2, but, I mean, they do that every weekend. So is that really luck? Yes and no, to be honest with you. So, Schumacher, I see him on the grid not as early as next year. I think he needs another year in Formula 2, and it's not been the best field this year in Formula 2. So I think he needs a couple of the other guys, young guns, perhaps from Formula 3, W Series and the likes, to maybe put a bit more pressure on Schumacher next year, I would say. Mercedes, the hottest seat in Formula 1. Maybe the Red Bull seats are, but I think the Mercedes seat is the most wanted seat in Formula 1 at the moment. This is what I predicted after the first race of the season. Valtteri Bottas won that first race of the season. But I'm stunned that I went with this lineup. I went with Lewis Hamilton to stay, which, spoiler alert, I've said now. But I also went with Esteban Ocon to come into the team, and that's also what I'm saying now. But honestly, when I checked this video back, I thought, oh my god, I had no clue I said that. I really didn't. And I think it was more the fact that, for me, back at the beginning of the season, with Vettel supposedly retiring, there was a giant cascade of positions. And with Bottas supposedly moving to Ferrari, I mean, it made sense to bring in Ocon. But now, the rationale has changed. Because Vettel isn't retiring, there's not a seat at Ferrari. But I think Mercedes will still make the switch. I think Mercedes are trying to look to the future, and whilst most teams are going to focus now on 2021, they're not going to put 100% into next year. You expect Mercedes to still be on the front foot next year. What a perfect time to bring in Ocon. What a perfect time to bring him in while Hamilton, arguably, is still in his prime. Maybe slightly towards the end of his prime now, but he's still in his prime, whilst Ocon is still in the Mercedes family. And that's the biggest thing at the moment for Mercedes. They don't want to let him go. They don't want to let him go to a Renault, a HAAS, a McLaren. I know there's not much space at McLaren, but you know what I mean. They don't want to let him go. And to leave him out for another year, I think would be too much. And I think they would have to let him at least try and go on a loan spell somewhere else. And I don't think they really want to do that. Lots of talk from Toto Wolff himself about the future, about bringing in young drivers. They let Verline go. I don't think they want to do the same with Ocon. So I've gone with Hamilton Ocon for 2020. But lots of debate over that one. Okay, Renault. Not been the best season for them. And as you can see, back in March, I went with a lineup that was very similar to this season's. The exact same Ricciardo and Hülkenberg. Spoiler alert, I've gone with the same now. As much as rumours love to talk about Hülkenberg leaving, I don't see it happening. I really don't. I think this is a cracking lineup at Renault. One of the best on the grid, criminally underrated, is Nico Hülkenberg. Did bottle it a little bit in Germany. There was a sniff of a podium there, and he threw it away. It sounds really harsh, and I think we all hurt a little bit when we saw him in the barriers in Hockenheim. But I still think he's proved over his career. He's even proved this season. I think both of them have. They've not been given a good car. They've both not been stellar. You know, I'm not giving them 10 out of 10 reports in my mid-season reviews, but they've been strong. And I don't think a team like Renault, in the situation they're in now, where they need as much data, as much analysis to help them improve over the next few years, they don't need to make a switch out a Hülkenberg for a Perez, Hülkenberg for a Magnussen. They don't Hülkenberg for a Bottas. They don't need a similar driver to Hülkenberg because that just upsets the balance. They don't need that. They don't need to bring in a young gun. And I will say this, I don't think at the moment Renault's Young Driver Academy has anyone ready to step up to Formula 1. Jack Aitken, Antoine Hubert, Guanyan Zhou, I think are all good drivers, and I think a couple of those potentially could, in a couple of years' time, make it to F1. I don't think now either of those three are ready for the step up. So Renault, boring again. I'm really sorry, I've not been as fun as I was at the beginning of the year, and this was an interesting one I went for at the beginning of the year. ROKIT Williams Racing. George Russell, yeah, I said he was going to stay. Pretty straightforward. Spoiler alert, I've gone with the same thing now. But it's the other seat that's, I think, quite interesting at Williams, because Robert Kubica, bless him, brilliant return. Just the pace on track hasn't been there. And at the beginning of the year, I felt Danny Kvyat could make his way into that seat. But after a really impressive Formula 2 campaign, doing a few practice sessions for Williams this season, I can see Nicholas Latifi going to Williams. He's the only rookie that I've got in the field this year. So with 3 more teams after this to discuss, he's the only rookie I've got coming in next year, Latifi. But I think he's proved this year that he's a pretty strong driver. I mean, I said earlier, I don't think Formula 2's been particularly impressive this year, but he's consistent, is Latifi. And I think for a team like Williams, that's all they need. However, what I will say, that's a very young lineup. Very inexperienced lineup. And maybe that's not what Williams are after. So, again, I don't really want to spoil what's up ahead, but there are a couple of drivers next year on my list that are without a seat. Experienced Formula 1 drivers with multi-seasons in Formula 1. Maybe they're a better option. But with the funds Latifi brings, I just see this being the route they're going to go to. But maybe they'll keep Kubica. He's got their only point for the team. Maybe behind closed doors he's doing a hell of a good job with developing that car. And that car has developed very well this year. I have to say that. So maybe they will keep him. It's a really interesting one, that one. So I'd love to know your thoughts. Now, to a team under a little bit of pressure. And this is the team that at the beginning of the year, after Melbourne, no one expected this team to be 9th in the Constructors, struggling to pick up points. 3 points finishes for Grosjean, 3 points finishes for Magnussen. No one expected that. Even after Grosjean's tyres fell off in Melbourne, no one expected that. That being said, the car's been pants, but I think the drivers haven't been brilliant either. And so, I've gone with a double switch. A double switcheroo for 2020. What a lineup this would be, by the way. But I'm looking at the grid, and I think Grosjean, I don't think he's been dreadful this year. I think he's been as good as K-Mag, to be honest with you. But both of them haven't been stellar in a season where the team needed them to be good. Grosjean was so lucky to be in this season. So lucky. He's on borrowed time, and I don't think he's given them enough of a reason to keep him. Magnussen, a similar kind of story. He's not been as consistent enough. When the car is there, he's got 3 points finishes this season, but no mechanical retirements. I think Grosjean's had 4. I think both of them now, they've had a chance at HAAS. I think both of them will move on. Bottas, finding a seat for him is very difficult, to be honest with you, because I think most teams will keep their lineup. So HAAS, to me, seems the best option for Valtteri. And I've also gone with Ferrari development driver Pascal Wehrlein. Want to mention, before anyone shouts at me, he was a Mercedes young driver. He is no longer. He's now with Ferrari. Just want to let you know, because some people are a bit confused there. I think that's a balance there of youth and experience. I think that's exactly the kind of thing Haas need. A little bit of fire in a driver, but also someone who's going to be consistent, score points, not bang into their teammate. That's the perfect lineup for Haas to me, but that's the one that's the most out there, to be honest with you. This lineup is wrong. No beating around the bush here. There's no way Toro Rosso next year are going to have Albon and Ticktum. Well, maybe Albon, but definitely not Dan Ticktum. He has been completely wiped out from the Red Bull programme. He's not going to be in Formula 1 next season at all, not even a sniff. So, I was wrong back in March, but I'm going to keep the driver lineup the same for next year. I'm going to stick it, well, I mean, it's the same if you've not heard. Albon and Gasly are swapping for next race. I'm sure everybody's heard, but if you haven't, there you are. So I'm going to say they're going to keep this lineup for next season, at least for the beginning of next season. Red Bull love to do the switcheroo, but I think Albon's going to do a solid job in Red Bull. So, Kvyat. He was the big one here for me because I don't really see many opportunities for Gasly to go elsewhere after the year he's had. So I think he'll stay put. But Kvyat, a podium in Germany, I think he's really proved himself as a strong, solid midfield driver. Does he deserve a chance elsewhere? Does he deserve a chance at a Haas? Does he deserve a chance at a Renault? A team that potentially, well, I mean, we all know Toro Rosso is a B team, but with a little bit more ambition, does Kvyat deserve that? I think so. I think so. But, as we've discussed in absolute minute detail with Albon, maybe Albon is just going into that seat for the rest of the year to see how good he is, for Gasly to see how good Gasly is against Kvyat, and then at the end of the year, Kvyat might go to Red Bull, Albon might go back. The only thing for me there, we've seen Kvyat be dropped by Red Bull and lost all his confidence. Is the same thing going to happen with Gasly? I think initially, yes, I think it will. And then if they dropped Albon, is Albon's confidence going to go? It's a vicious circle, is Red Bull. And I just hope he doesn't claim another driver in Gasly. And I hope Gasly can refine that mojo. But I also hope Albon doesn't lose his confidence if he gets dropped at the end of the year. I did say back in March Red Bull would keep their lineup. I don't think anyone expected, even after Melbourne, the pretty awful round Gasly had, I don't think anyone expected him to struggle as much as he's done so far this year. And so, for Red Bull 2020, the final team, we've made it to the end, the final team for next year, I've gone with Max Verstappen to stay with the team. I know some people love to say he's going to move to Mercedes next year. Too soon, for me, too soon next year, but I think Albon, I think he'll do alright. I think he'll do alright. Something I found really interesting when making this video, though, is between Albon, Kvyat and Gasly, Verstappen's still younger than all of them. So they're all fighting over this other seat at Red Bull, and yet Verstappen has the most experience in Formula 1, but it's also the youngest, which I did find quite amusing, and really is testament to how good Max Verstappen has been in Formula 1 over the past 5 seasons. 5 seasons. He's been in Formula 1 now, Max Verstappen. Crikey. He really is bossing it this year. But of course, I would love to know your 2020 driver lineups in the comments. I was going through some of your predictions back in at the beginning of the year, and I thought mine were bad. Some of yours were worse, but some of them hit the nail on the head. Looking really good for next year. So if you want to go and revisit your own, you can do. That video is still up on the channel. But if you want to do your updated versions, throw them in the comments below. Later on today will be another episode of our mid-season reviews. No spoilers to who it is. And a quick update. I did take down the Alex Albon one because the next day he was announced to be at Red Bull. So I'm going to do a completely new and fresh one on Albon. Hopefully that'll be sorted in the next few days. Thank you very much for watching. If you're new, feel free to subscribe for more Formula 1 content throughout this very long Formula 1 summer break. It's taken forever. Thank you very much for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.